Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno, and joining me is Daniel Starkand, who's using a night off from running Lakers Nation for us to talk a little Dodgers. Daniel, it's been some time since we've had you on with you. How have things been going?
It's been good. Obviously, like you said, been busy with Lakers, but we got spring training coming up in just a couple weeks here, so no better time to come on and talk a little Dodgers. We got the two OGs here from Dodger Blue, so.
That's right. That's a good point. And we want to thank those of you who are joining us live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're doing another live show again after some NFL playoff games, and one in particular just ended. The Detroit Lions blew a pretty big lead. So apologies to any potential Lions fans in the chat. But yeah, a big thank you to our podcast listeners as well. So, like we said, the good news is spring training is right around the corner, and that's especially true for the Dodgers, who have to start early because of the Soul Series in March. And so, Daniel, as we sit here on the 28th, Dodgers pitchers and catchers, and Padres for that matter, are just under 2 weeks from reporting to Camelback Ranch, and the first full squad workout is on Valentine's Day. So that's, it's a good time for us to be talking some baseball, because we've filled the offseason. Now things are going to start to pick up. And as we get into tonight's show, you'll see we're going to discuss non-roster invites, some potential rumors, a trade, possible reunions with some familiar names that I've already seen in the comments. Some people aren't necessarily too thrilled by. But a reminder just to please, before we get started, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell. That's definitely the best way to make sure you don't miss out on any videos. And we're hitting a big stretch this week. The Dodgers have their community tour that's going to lead into FanFest on Saturday. Chris Taylor and Mookie Betts also have charity events coming up, and so you don't want to miss any of that. And again, if you're listening to this in podcast form, please subscribe, rate, and review. That definitely helps us out there. And we're planning on answering some of your questions at the end of tonight's show. But remember, if you want to get anything if you want to guarantee that your question is answered, Super Chat is definitely the way to go. We'll stop our show and do it. And that helps sustain and grow our channel. So we definitely appreciate that. And I am seeing, just real quick, some early questions about Jeff. There's been some scheduling conflicts with Jeff. And so when we do our shows at 7:10 for the next few weeks, Jeff isn't necessarily available. We may move some to 9 p.m. and that's when he would be around. But Jeff is still definitely working. He had 2 interviews go up this past week, one with Ben Badler, another with, I believe his name was Joey. The last name is escaping me right now. It's discussing, that's right. Thank you. It's discussing the Dodgers farm system and prospects and stuff like that. So definitely watch those, and they're also up on our podcast feed as well. So that's that. Thank you. It's kind of a long-winded intro, so thank you for bearing with me. And now let's get into tonight's show. And Daniel, the first topic is non-roster invites to big league camp and spring training. Dodgers announced 20 players are going to be in big league camp with them. And this, of course, the non-roster invites are not on their 40-man roster, but they get a chance to be in big league camp, kind of the major league clubhouse side of Camelback Ranch. The group is, it's like per usual, it's a blend of some prospects, veterans with MLB experience, and other players who are probably just going to be, mainly organizational depth throughout the minor league level, primarily AAA Oklahoma City. And I think, for me here, the headliners are obviously Daniel Hudson, who everybody's certainly familiar with. On the prospect side, you have Dalton Rushing and River Ryan are going to be in big league camp with the Dodgers this year. So I think that'll be exciting. Daniel, is there anyone else that kind of sticks out to you?
I mean, the first guys are the guys you just named. Obviously, Daniel Hudson is the headliner here. Like, what is he going to look like in spring training? Can he work his way on to the big league roster? We know he's had his fair share of injury, issues the past couple of years. He's getting up there in age, but we also know when he's been healthy, he has typically pitched really well for the Dodgers. So he's kind of someone to keep an eye on in spring training, see, where his health is at, where his velo's at and such. And like you mentioned, they do have a couple guys with major league, experience in there. Jesse Hahn, Eliezer Hernandez, two guys who haven't pitched in the big leagues in a couple years, but the Dodgers obviously saw something there to bring them in. And these are mainly just like depth type pieces. Like we've seen with the Dodgers time and time again throughout the course of the regular season, pitchers are going to get hurt. They're going to need guys that they could call up to make a spot start or whatever the case may be. So, anytime, the Dodgers kind of identify someone with, major league experience, you think, what tweaks can they make? So going to, be keeping an eye on those guys. And also, like you mentioned, the top prospects, Dalton Rushing, River Ryan are the headliners there kind of. Obviously, those guys aren't, competing for an opening day roster spot necessarily, but it's always fun to get out to spring training and see those guys typically, in the back half of games, getting that bat or two or an inning or two on the mound and just kind of see where their progress is at. So, yeah, there's, I'm not saying any of these guys are going to be huge, contributors necessarily this season, but it will be fun to track them in spring training and see if who could end up being that guy down the road who pops onto the roster and ends up doing well or whatever.
Yeah, and I think let's kind of zero in a little bit on Daniel Hudson, just because I think his name is somebody we're going to have to sort of keep in mind as we kind of go along in our show tonight and move on to different one key topic, but specifically. I think I don't want to necessarily speak for you. I was a little surprised that the Dodgers didn't. I'd have to go back. I forgot what the number was on Hudson. They had a team option on him, I think, right? Or was he just a straight? Okay, so I was a little surprised that they declined it at the time, just because I thought that it was Hudson and the Dodgers were kind of a good fit together. Like the Dodgers, they have the bullpen depth to sort of, if he needs a little bit of time early on in the season, to recover from his latest knee injury, then it would be fine. Then to see that they re-signed him didn't surprise me. And I think that it was a minor league deal. Like that shocked me a little bit, but also it's kind of the best of both worlds for the Dodgers because there's basically no pressure on Daniel Hudson. Like you said, spring training, like he can use the entire spring, just basically making sure he's healthy and then go to AAA Oklahoma City, pitch that first month and find your footing, that way. That being said, what would you think are sort of reasonable expectations for Hudson in the spring?
Yeah, I think you got to temper expectations just because of the injury history and his age. Obviously, like he's not in his prime and he's coming back from now back-to-back years with, significant knee injuries. So I'm kind of going in with no expectations. And I think that's why the minor league deal kind of fits perfectly. Cause like if he goes out in spring training and shows he's healthy and his stuff looks good, you could easily add him to the roster if you want. And if not, you like you just said, you could give him as much time as he needs. Like he could go down to AAA and work on some stuff, get back to fully, 100%. So he is kind of the one name on the list that sticks out just because you don't really think someone with his, resume as a minor league deal type of guy. But it is kind of similar to Jason Hayward last year in a sense that it's kind of like if he's healthy and could prove that he could still perform, he's going to be added to the roster eventually. Like he's not just going to be stashed at AAA all season, but he does coming off the last couple seasons he's had, he does need to show, that he is healthy and still has this stuff. So I like that deal for both sides. And And I'm hoping for the best because when he was healthy, he was like a legit, back end of the bullpen type guy, even like a closer type. So if the Dodgers were able to get that out of him, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I think and I am assuming here, but I think it's a safe assumption is the Dodgers and Daniel Hudson basically have discussed or did discuss kind of a plan to, hey, okay, we'll bring you back on a minor league deal. This is kind of what we're thinking, sort of mapping out the season. Because typically, especially for veteran players like Hudson, minor league contracts do have opt-out clauses. And hey, maybe his will come up at some point. And if he's still in AAA and the Dodgers bullpen is sort of loaded, like maybe there's not necessarily room and he just ends up moving on at that point. But I would be shocked just because, like I said, I think over the past couple of years, and the Dodgers have this reputation of with other players too, of like working well with them and sort of being, I think, upfront as to what they're planning and thinking. Another name that we both agreed is kind of sticking out is Dalton Rushing. And I think his, to me, is obviously on the other end of the spectrum, just because he's a young prospect still sort of making his way up through the farm system. But if you've kept up with our website, we've published different prospect rankings that have been released by Baseball America, MLB Pipeline, Baseball Prospectus, and the sort. And Dalton Rushing has basically overtaken Diego Cartaya in terms of prospect pedigree. And so, the Dodgers, just a year ago, maybe not necessarily last year because Cartaya's slide sort of began, but 2 years ago, 3 years ago, he was the catcher of the future. And now, I don't know, like if you asked me, to basically play, you know me well, I'm not a betting man at all, but if you've twisted my arm hard enough and I needed to, I would probably bet on Dalton Rushing making more of an impact with the Dodgers at this point, just because of what we sort of seen with Diego Cartaya. And that's not to say he won't necessarily have a successful career of his own, but I'm not necessarily sure it's going to end up coming with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Dodgers have Will Smith right now, so like there's the opportunities are already limited at catcher. But when you look, he only has 2 years of club control left, and then who knows beyond that. Obviously, we would love for them to sign him to a long-term extension, but as we've seen with some other guys, it doesn't always work out that way. So to be able to have this discussion is even a huge luxury. Like the fact that the Dodgers have 2 quality catching prospects coming up. I'm in agreement with you, though. It seems like Rushing has kind of taken that leap above Cartaya. He's pretty much ever since the Dodgers drafted him, he's just come in and hit at every single level. So that's kind of why I'm excited to see him in spring training. Maybe take some at bats off actual big league pitchers, see how he does there. And also as a catcher, obviously there's a lot to learn. Like you got to learn all the pitchers on the staff, like and such. So just him being around all those guys will bode well for the future, even if we're probably not going to see him at all this season, unless there's a few injuries and he just, continues raking. But it'll be a good experience for him just to be in big league camp for a few weeks and learn as much as possible from the Will Smiths, from Austin Barnes, and some of the veteran pitchers on that staff.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that Dalton Rushing was drafted out of Louisville, which of course is where Will Smith is from. And I think as a baseball program in general, Louisville produces good talent, but it seems to be holding especially true at the catcher position.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to now our next topic, and that's maybe not so much of a surprise that Kiké Hernández might have a preference to re-sign with the Dodgers. And although the Dodgers appear largely set on the position player side, especially with the recent signing of Teoscar Hernandez, I know we've been receiving several questions on social media about Kiké. We've gotten them in our live shows for the past few weeks. And according to Ken Rosenthal, there's somewhat of a general belief that Kiké wants to re-sign with the Dodgers. Rosenthal noted that the Angels have interest in Kiké, but like I said, their belief is that he wants to remain with the Dodgers. Daniel, this is sort of a complex situation. I'll ask you kind of what I think is maybe the easiest question. Would you want Kiké back on the team?
Me personally, yes, and I think me and you have kind of been, the high guys on the staff when it comes to Kiké and wanting him back, going back to pretty much the beginning of the offseason. Obviously, we know the versatility he provides. Like you could put that on any roster, and it fills a need. And we've seen the postseason success, and obviously the clubhouse. He's just a great guy to have around. Like everyone loves Kiké, so in that sense, I definitely wanted him back. But I think the addition of Margot from Tampa Bay with that Glasnow trade, that was Kiké's roster spot right there. Like it felt like similar type roles, similar type profile. Obviously Kiké could play the infield, which Margot can, and Margot probably has, a little more speed than Kiké and is a little better defender in the outfield. But it just felt like that kind of took up that roster spot. And if you look at the Dodgers roster as it currently stands, like I think the position players, like it looks pretty full to me. Like you even have someone like Miguel Vargas, who's probably going to have to start the year at AAA. So it doesn't look like there's really too much room there. Who knows how long this drags out? Maybe if it goes into spring training and an injury happens, God forbid, obviously, but then you have a role open up there. But when you have Margot and Kiké and you just sign Teoscar Hernandez to be your everyday left fielder, it just doesn't really feel like they have a roster spot for him, which is unfortunate, especially seeing this report come out that he wants to come back. It would have been great to have him back. I just don't see it right now.
Yeah, and you sort of touched on what was going to be my follow-up question, is that, is there even a path to making this happen? I agree with you. I think it's extremely unlikely. And as much as Teoscar Hernandez, the signing Teoscar sort of, I think, finalized the Dodgers position group, I'm in agreement with you that when the Dodgers acquired Margot as part of their trade for Glasnow, that was sort of the first indicator, like, okay, Kiké is not coming back. Because then at that point, Margot, Kiké conceivably is the outfielder. Margot doesn't have the same versatility, but yes, like that kind of was a roster spot earmarked for him. And then after that, the Dodgers were very clearly looking for, I think, some power in their right-handed back, which as much as Kiké brings different attributes to the table, a power bat isn't necessarily one of them, even though he will run into some home runs here and there, and he does have pop. It's not necessarily, they went from JD Martinez at the DH position last year from the right-handed side. He was removed from the equation once the Dodgers signed this up-and-coming guy, Shohei Ohtani. And so Teoscar then, kind of fit the bill a little bit better for being that power right-handed bat that they're looking to replace with JD basically moving on, even though, he's still free agent. Free agency has been really weird where there's, but Blake Snell is still out there and spring training is starting in a few weeks, but hey, I'm sure guys will be signed at some point. But yeah, I mean, I've been open from the beginning. If it came to down, if Manuel Margot in the trade meant no Kiké, like I wasn't sure how I would necessarily feel with that. I think there's something to Kiké's versatility that the Dodgers clearly value. I mean, that's something that they've loved with, any Zach McKinstry, Chris Taylor, Kiké Hernández, like those types of guys. And I thought, Kiké also showed up in the playoffs multiple times. And that's something that I'm a big, you can't measure like heart and stuff like that. And so I think he has a little bit of that. So it will be interesting to see. I do think that it's not a likely path, but I think there's a potential path to potentially getting Kiké on the roster. And it lies in a possible Kenley Jansen trade. So in the same article by Ken Rosenthal, he noted that the Dodgers, rather than maybe, being interested in re-signing Kiké, are potentially more focused on acquiring a high-end reliever. And he I don't think it's necessarily a report that like trade talks have been held, but guys they would be interested in are one of them being a Kenley Jansen trade. Daniel, let's start with sort of this first question. How possible or likely do you think a Kenley trade would be?
I mean, I wouldn't completely rule it out just because you really never know what Andrew Friedman's, cooking up his sleeve. And like you said, I wouldn't call this like an exact report, but I feel like there's been kind of a lot of these, little whispers that the Dodgers, could be interested in Kenley, that the Red Sox may be willing to trade him. So while I would say it's not likely, like just because of how late in the offseason, we are and how the Dodgers roster is shaping up, like I think the Dodgers are pretty much done at this point. But Andrew Friedman has always said he's going to be opportunistic, and we obviously know they have a very a lot of familiarity with Kenley Jansen. Me personally, I think the bullpen is looking good right now, and I don't think you necessarily need to go, giving up prospects or whatever it would take to get Kenley. But at the same time, if this is a season where you're truly, really going for it, and you're willing to spend, whatever it'll take, I'm never going to say, no to adding another, quality bullpen arm.
Yeah, so just a couple of notes on Kenley. He's entering the final season of a 2-year, $32 million contract. He was an all-star in 2023, had 29 saves and 33 opportunities, 3.363 ERA. His velocity did increase a bit, but his strikeout rate was down from 2022, and his hard hit rate was up. So there's some good, some bad from maybe the last time the Dodgers saw him. I know that when I had a chance to visit with Kenley and Justin Turner in Anaheim when the Red Sox were playing the Angels, I was talking to Kenley, and he obviously there wasn't any report or possibility coming to LA. It was just catching up how everything's been going. He spoke fondly when he was looking back on his time with the Dodgers, and he was enjoying Boston very much as well. I think this is a byproduct of the Red Sox basically, I don't know if you want to call it tanking, but sort of already kind of punting on the season, if you will. I know that I forgot if it was their owner or the GM who came out recently and basically said like their payroll might be lower than what it was at last season.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm with you. I would be surprised, the Josh Hader stuff, any of the bullpen things at this point, like have all surprised me. The Hader one, I understood a little bit from the standpoint of if the Dodgers could potentially get him on a 1 or 2 year deal, then, sure, at that point, it's just money. They've spent a bunch of it already. Why not? Like you said, if you're going all in, go all in. With the Kenley thing and the Kiké, like I sort of gave a little bit of a tease. Part of me wonders if the Dodgers and Red Sox were to work out a trade, does Margot get sent to Boston before he even plays a game for the Dodgers? And then that creates an opportunity for Kiké. I know that would be a lot of sort of moving parts, but would you be open to some sort of trade that the Dodgers make? I don't know in terms of prospects what they would really have to give up. I think some of that would obviously depend on how much salary the Red Sox agree to pay down. But is that something you would, maybe like to see if it means, trading Margot plus whatever else to get Kiké and also, to get Kenley and also re-sign Kiké?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, any trade that would involve, sending Margot off, I would not be opposed to it at all. I wasn't really in love with that acquisition in the first place. Obviously, we all kind of have lived with it just because it meant Glasnow coming too. But obviously, I think I know, at least speaking for the two of us, we would have preferred just signing Kiké instead of Margot. So if you could work out some sort of deal where you are shipping Margot off, who I believe the Rays paid down like $5 million of his salary or somewhere in that range. So it's a little more manageable now. I would definitely be on board with that. And if you're giving up, mid-tier a prospect or two, that's probably where I would draw the line. I'm not giving up any of my top prospects for Kenley. I just, for me personally, I kind of like the bullpen, not necessarily having specific roles. I think we're going to see Evan Phillips closing a lot of games if it stays as currently constructed, but I also kind of like that flexibility and Dave Roberts not kind of getting locked into this guy has the 9th and we can't switch that at all. And that's kind of how it was with Kenley a lot of the time. And a lot of other closers too. We saw it with the following year with Craig Kimbrell as well. So all that to say, at the end of the day, I would do it, but I'm just not giving up anything of significance for a bullpen piece. That's just kind of always been my personal philosophy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think especially in this case, as you said, the Dodgers bullpen has plenty of depth, this is particularly in terms of high leverage relief pitchers. And I have always been of the mind of, add as much talent as possible. Like I would rather, give me an all-star type team. And yes, it doesn't guarantee you anything, but I'd rather have like as many good players than not quite as many good players. So this is interesting, and it kind of, you sort of brought it up, and we do have this question from WWS. He says, with Jansen, he wants to know, would Jansen be cool with not being the closer? My guess is if the Dodgers were to move forward with this trade, there is some sort of discussion as in terms of, hey, like you are, call it maybe our primary closer, but not the only guy we're going to use. We mentioned Daniel Hudson earlier in the show. He's on, the minor league deal, non-roster invite, somebody who I think you and I would, if he's healthy and pitches well, you and I would both expect him to be up in the bullpen at some point. So that's another high leverage guy for the late innings. Evan Phillips, you brought up Brusdar Gratterall. And Blake Trinan, he's still around as much as maybe depending on what happens with his shoulder, maybe he becomes a DFA candidate. The team option on him for this season ended up being so low because unfortunately he hasn't been able to pitch because of the injury. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think this trade would happen without there being some sort of clarity or at least discussion with the Dodgers, letting Kenley know, like, hey, this is what your role is looking like here.
Yeah, and I do think it is important to note that, like, Kenley's at the point of his career where he's like, certain amount of saves away from reaching significant milestones as far as getting to the Hall of Fame and such. So I think if it was up to him, he would probably prefer to be the closer wherever he goes. But at the same time, he's not a free agent right now, so it's not like he's picking his destination. Like, oh, that team needs a closer. That team needs a closer. I have interest in them. But like you said, I would imagine those conversations would take place if they ever got down the line to the point where a trade was getting close to happening. But yeah, I still think if they acquired Kenley, he would be the best candidate for the closer position. So I don't think there would be any issues to start. It would just be down the line if he falters, a few times or whatever. And there's a lot of other quality arms in the bullpen, then what happens then? That's where there would maybe be an issue. But I would imagine conversations would take place if talks got close enough that they were bringing him on just to make sure, he's all good in whatever role they need from him.
Yeah, and I know, reading kind of the comments as we've been discussing this has been very much of a combination of the Dodgers don't have room for Kenley and also fans just not wanting him back. I think Kenley had a little bit of a rough ending to his Dodgers career. It wasn't, he was so elite when he was, at the top of his game, basically at his peak. And then there was some drop off, unfortunately. And some of that was just a pitcher getting older. And I think just different things, he dealt with mechanical issues, of velocity drop. Like I mentioned, it picked back up a little bit. So part of me wonders and sort of believes, at least, that if the Dodgers were to get sort of this version of Kenley that pitched last season, maybe they make a few tweaks here and there, and he's certainly more effective than I think his last time here, and maybe even a better closer than he was last season. And he's not, giving fans kind of, I saw people saying it was nail biting time when he came in at that point. So it would be interesting to see. All of this being said, I don't really see a trade happening. I know you have repeated your stance that the Dodgers bullpen is pretty much set, and it's not necessarily an area of need. Since we were discussing the bullpen and Blake Trinan and Hawaiian Kira asked what is going on with Trinan. So to the best of our knowledge and kind of reports and interviews and stuff that have been made available, Trinan is recovering from his shoulder surgery that he had in 2022, I believe. Right? Or is my timeline off? So I know he missed all of 2023, basically outside of
it was like last off season pretty much, because he tried to come back like before the playoffs in 2022, but that didn't work out too well.
That's right.
So yeah, it's been like a full year.
Yeah. So Trinan was on rehab assignments this past season in 2023. The Dodgers kept saying, he would be kind of a late season addition. Sort of kept pushing back his timeline just because different things weren't necessarily going right. He basically dealt with lingering right shoulder soreness while he was on his rehab assignment. They finally made the decision to just shut that down, basically give him, the final maybe 5 to 6 weeks of the season to just, focus on this year now. But as much as he's been able to sort of rehab without any pressure this past few months, like, you don't necessarily know what you're going to be getting out of him. And so, maybe that has fueled the Dodgers' reported interest in Josh Hader, other relievers, another one we're going to get into, in a potential Kenley Jansen trade. Go ahead. Did you want to add something?
Yeah. No, well, just to add to that, I think Trinan is like a good representation of like what, like, the Dodgers have a lot of question marks in their bullpen that could end up being really good, could end up being nothing. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be one of the bigger storylines of spring training, kind of like which of these guys is going to emerge and show that they're healthy and could, produce, whether that be Trinan, Daniel Hudson, like we've been talking about. JP Fireeisen is another guy coming back from injury that we haven't really seen at all, but he was really good in Tampa Bay before. So it's like if 2 or 3 of these guys end up, being good, then you don't necessarily need to go out and make a trade for a Kenley or or whoever else is out there. So I think you could assess during spring training and pretty much the first half of the regular season, and then there's still going to be plenty of bullpen options available at the trade deadline. And around then is when you kind of know like who's good and who's not, just because relievers are so volatile. Like 1 year a guy might be great, the next he might suck. So around the deadline, you could see like who's having a good year that year that you're interested in, whether it be a rental or a long-term piece. That's kind of what we've seen from the Dodgers in the past. So, there's a lot of question marks, but I think there's enough of them that you don't need to necessarily rely on all those guys hitting, and you could still end up having, a pretty solid bullpen.
We're going to stick with the bullpen, and we're going to stick with another player who has played for both the Red Sox and the Dodgers, and that's Ryan Brasier, who's been pretty popular in the comments. A lot of fans saying, don't trade for Kenley, just sign Brasier. Dodgers have been reported as having interest. It's kind of been a prevailing theme for the past few weeks now. I'm a little surprised. I mean, I guess on one hand, I'm a little surprised Brasier hasn't been signed yet. On the other hand, like I mentioned earlier, free agency this offseason has been pretty weird. If it weren't for the Dodgers, like, there wouldn't necessarily be a whole lot of activity. Daniel, we've spent the last half hour or so kind of discussing and explaining how the bullpen is stacked and there isn't really room for anybody. But Ryan Brasier, is that somebody you think the Dodgers should find a way to get back into the fold?
I mean, I guess if it's a cheap enough 1 year type deal, then yes. But kind of going back to what I was just saying, like about volatility, like if you're re-signing Ryan Brasier expecting to get the same guy that you got from him last season, that's just not really realistic. He's a prime candidate for regression, which, I mean, he was pretty much perfect last year. So obviously anyone is going to regress from that. But if you look at his profile, like he's not a high strikeout guy. He's not a high velo guy. So if it's cheap enough, why not? Just because it's another lottery ticket that you could add to the mix in hopes of him being good again. But I don't think, Ryan Brasier is going to make or break the Dodgers bullpen this season. And if he has multi-year offers or nice, solid 1 year deals elsewhere, then I don't think the Dodgers should be in, a bidding war by any means.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the way things have sort of gone at this point, I sort of anticipate Brasier would probably have to settle for a 1 year deal. But I started to think that Josh Hader wasn't going to get the type of contract he was looking for. And then all of a sudden, things picked up, gained steam with the Astros, and he ended up getting the richest, I forget what present day value contract for a relief pitcher.
I was told that the Dodgers are the only team that does deferrals. So I guess there's some other guys out there that have deferrals in their contracts.
Yeah, it turns out the Dodgers aren't necessarily breaking any rules with the contracts they're giving out. But yeah, I think what we've gotten a lot of is, Ryan Brasier is going to be another Chris Martin, where pitched well for the Dodgers. They didn't necessarily pay him, has moved on and still performed relatively well. I think that obviously exists, and so does, like you said, the opportunity for some regression. And you probably would have to bet on regression just because Brasier, to his credit, was so good after signing with the Dodgers, and also give the organization's pitching coaches some credit there. I know Brasier said they worked on something, like after he signed his minor league deal, he went to Camelback first before getting called up to the team. So that's kind of where that stands with Brasier. Dodgers probably are there, maybe have asked, like, hey, if you're about to sign with the team, at least check in with us maybe a final time, and then they might see if they want to potentially match whatever deal may be coming his way. But the closer it gets to the start of spring training, the more likely I think the Dodgers could be in position to basically get him on another 1 year deal and sort of figure things out from there. Go ahead. I needed to find a question.
No, yeah, just to kind of add on to that, like the Dodgers are in such a unique position that, like you're saying, like we're getting so close to spring training that guys are almost, just looking for jobs at this point. And if you're willing to take, a pay cut or a discount, then I would imagine a lot of guys would rather do that with the Dodgers than elsewhere, because you're going to win a lot of games. You're going to, compete for a World Series. And also specifically, if you're a pitcher, how well the Dodgers pitching guys have done. So yeah, you might be taking a discount this year, but if you go out and have a good year with the Dodgers, you're going to get a bigger contract the next offseason elsewhere. So that might be something to watch out for as spring training's kind of starting and guys still aren't signing. Like at that point, they kind of have to settle for whatever they got, and maybe the Dodgers could get a Brasier or someone similar for a lot cheaper than expected.
Yeah, great point. So this wasn't a question, but a comment from Laura, who's with us pretty much on a weekly basis. Said she's missed you, Daniel. Again, like if you missed it at the beginning of the show, Daniel, he runs Lakers Nation, and so the basketball season keeps him busy, but he's definitely always willing to come join us whenever he has some time. And I know the start of spring training has him pretty excited.
Yeah, no, I miss you all too. And like Matt just said, it's starting to be, get around to baseball season here. I know it's usually kind of after the Super Bowl is when it's really like, all right, it's baseball season now. So I guess we still got a couple weeks, but definitely getting excited, obviously, for this Dodger team in particular has me, even more excited than I usually am this time of year.
This is a comment from Norm Lee. He says, if Daniel Hudson can show he is healthy, I don't think the team will pursue bullpen arm. I agree with this. I think some of it will need to be that the expected guy, the Evan Phillips, the Brusdar Graterols, those types still, sort of meet expectations, because as we saw at the beginning of last season, the bullpen was expected to be a strength and it was a weakness for at least half the year before they sort of found their footing. I would expand on Norm's comment that it's also, it's not just Daniel Hudson. It's, I think, Blake Trinan. You have to see what you're going to have in him. JP Fireeyes, another great name that you brought up. Dodgers haven't seen him at all yet, just because he's been rehabbing from his shoulder surgery. But I think they knew that him potentially pitching last year wasn't going to be likely. So that was very much a 2024 and beyond outlook. Before we move on to kind of our last planned topic, Daniel, let's take a quick break. Nomofomo wants to know, he says, I haven't been following the Lakers. How are they doing? Give us a quick rundown.
I would say they're doing well if you judge doing well off winning one game and then losing one game and then winning one game and then losing one game. But when you're the Lakers, that's not really considered doing well. So it has been a rocky season. They got a good win last night against the Warriors. I'm sure a lot of people watched that. Double overtime. It was a fun show. LeBron and Steph. But yeah, I mean, we got the NBA trade deadline coming up. I think before spring training, that's kind of going to be where my focus is for the next couple of weeks. We'll see if they could make any moves. But as of now, it doesn't look like they're going to be competing for a championship. But you never know. One move could change that. But with them, covering the Lakers, there's definitely never a shortage of topics to discuss, things to cover, entertainment. So it has been an enjoyable season in that sense.
Yeah, Adam818 says Lakers are in first place. I can confirm that the Lakers are undefeated since Saturday night. So it's, great
True.
season if you started picking up with their double OT win.
True.
All right. So our last topic before we sort of turn the show over to you guys is Dodger. Well, you can't call it Dodger. You can't call it Fan Fest anymore. It's called DodgerFest. That the name change came with also charging $10 for tickets now, but there still are some VIP experiences, and one of those is lunch with Andre Ethier, meet and greets with Emmett Sheehan, Michael Grove, Kyle Hurt, Alex Vesia, Ryan Yarbrough, and JP Fireeisen. Other experiences still available are a hands-on opportunity that I think is pretty cool to allow fans to sort of get to handle, touch. I don't know about put on, but like game-used helmets, jerseys, bats, stuff like that. Plus, there's also a Jackie Robinson tour, which if you haven't seen the statue out in center field, definitely worth visiting. And the Dodgers have other memorabilia up throughout the stadium to honor Jackie and some of the other franchise legends. And there's a chance to visit the press box with Pepe Iniguez and Kids Run the Bases. So, Daniel, I know FanFest is a little different this year, so I'll give you some flexibility when I ask this. What would you say are sort of the must-dos for fans when going to FanFest? And if it was something you enjoyed from the past, you can mention that as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I did see the list of who's expected to attend it, and pretty much all the new guys they brought in this offseason are expected to be there. Shohei Ohtani will be there. So to me, that's already a highlight in itself. Like there's been past years where there hasn't, necessarily been big offseason additions, or, some of their stars weren't in town or whatever. So that kind of took a little bit of the air out of it. But I think this is going to be a great one with kind of all the big dogs in attendance. And you mentioned the VIP experiences and the stuff that unfortunately you have to pay extra. But I will say like that's the stuff that's kind of worth it. Like the tours and the meet and greets, like that's when you actually get to get up close and see, see the behind the scenes type stuff and such. if you just, it's fun to just go like as the, the base level. I think they are charging this year. It's, what is it? $20, I want to say 10 bucks. Okay. So it's not too bad. But there is kind of, when you just do that, there's kind of a lot of standing around and waiting and what do I do here? So I would suggest, if you can, do some of the VIP experiences. But I do like, for me, always the highlight was just they have the big stage set up, and they usually have like David Vassay up there, and they bring up players and do a Q&A and such. Fans get to ask questions and such. So that was kind of always the highlight for me. We were there as media most of the time, so we were in the bullpen talking with the players and such. But whenever I could get out to the stage and hear some of the interviews, that was always the highlight for me.
Yeah, David Vassay has such a good relationship with all the players that he gets them to open up, basically, and it makes for some funny stories that are not necessarily baseball related, and it kind of takes fans sort of behind the scenes. And last year at FanFest, the Dodgers announced that they are retiring 34 for Fernando Valenzuela, and Stan Kasten also revealed or explained both, I guess, that they were adding the new LED lights to the stadium, which I know were pretty popular with the fans last season. So I'm not necessarily counting on any like huge announcements. I think the Dodgers have done all their big news earlier in the offseason with the signings and trades and stuff. So I'm not expecting anything crazy, but you never know what can come of it. So yeah, that's kind of a quick rundown of some of the, I am seeing comments. Yes, a lot of the VIP experiences are sold out. The majority of the ones that I just named were still available at last check. So I did focus on those. Again, one of them was a lunch with Andre Ethier, visiting the press box with Pepe Ndez, a Jackie Robinson history tour, and kind of a hands-on experience as well with some game-used memorabilia such as bats, helmets, and jerseys and stuff like that. All right, so that does it for kind of our planned show tonight. Now we're going to turn it over to everybody else. I know Daniel and I, we enjoy interacting with you all, and so we'll answer questions as long as you guys have them. And just another reminder, if you want to make sure that yours is answered, you could do a super chat. We'll stop what we're doing and get to that right away. Just please start your question with the word question in all caps. It makes it easier for us to pick them out as we're scrolling through the comments. And while we wait for those to come in, we want to congratulate Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Todd Helton on being voted into the Hall of Fame. If you missed it, we do have Adrian Beltre's conference call with reporters after he was inducted. That's up on our YouTube channel, so definitely give that a watch. Daniel, is there a favorite maybe Beltre memory that comes to mind?
I was kind of too young to have any like specific memories, but he was kind of one of my first favorite Dodgers, and he's always kind of the one that got away in a sense. Like I think everyone after the year he had, everyone would have liked to keep him. Obviously, now that we've seen he went on to have a Hall of Fame career, it would have been cool to have that guy as a Dodger. But I did see him at the stadium last year. Like he still comes by. He's still friends with a lot of people in the organization. Obviously, he was teammates with Dave Roberts on the Dodgers, so it's still good to have him as a part of the Dodger family, even if he didn't stay here for his career.
Yeah. All right, so we do have some good questions that have come in already. Carrie wants to know, will there be a Dodgers community caravan this week? Yes, they are doing their annual Love LA community tour. Blake and myself are going to be at sort of the different events, and so we'll have written coverage on DodgerBlue.com, and we'll have videos and interviews uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. So make sure, like I said at the beginning, if you were with us and if you missed it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and ring the notification bell so that you don't miss anything that we're going to be posting, because this is it's definitely, I've seen the schedule, and there's some things that the Dodgers don't necessarily want disclosed to the public, so I can't share all the details now, but it's loaded with a bunch of events and players participating, and so you definitely don't want to miss any of that. We have another question from GI. Will Buehler make the opening day roster? If so, who are the odd men out?
It definitely seems like it's trending that he's not going to be on the opening day roster. Obviously, we'll see once spring training comes around, kind of where he's at. Like if he's not throwing bullpens and facing hitters kind of in the early part of spring training, then you could kind of tell that they are slow playing him. But from all the indications, it seems like that's the plan, and I think it makes sense. Like if you're going to limit his innings, might as well do it, in the beginning of the season. Obviously, you don't want to run into a problem down the road in September, October, where he's thrown too many innings. So yeah, I think with the signing of Paxton and the depth you've built up, you got some young guys who can make spot starts if necessary. You could get by with slow playing Bueller for the month of April, and then kind of activating him when May rolls around, and you still got plenty of season left at that point, and then he should be fresher down the road.
Yeah, I forget if it was Brandon Gomes or Dave Roberts, but maybe both of them at points during the offseason, it was sort of implied that the Dodgers were going to slow play Bueller, and so I took that as he's not going to be with them come opening day. So I've kind of been operating under that assumption. I think when you look at also the signing of, oh my goodness, his name is, I'm completely spacing on it, the left-hander.
James Paxton.
Yes, James Paxton. Thank you. I wanted to call him Wade Miley. No disrespect to all you lefties out there, Daniel. I think that further lends to, maybe Bueller won't be ready for the start of the season yet. I know the Dodgers, they still needed pitching depth, but definitely maybe earlier on more so. But Blake brought up I thought, I don't want to give him too much credit, so I'll call it a decent point. And he said if Bueller, gets through spring training healthy, like, is he going to maybe sort of push the team and say, hey, like, I want to be on the roster, I want to pitch now? And I think that's something that they may factor in, if you haven't necessarily rushed his recovery, if he reached the different benchmarks throughout the spring, but also it's going to be a condensed spring. So it's a little bit of maybe give and take there. So yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, just I agree. I don't see Bueller making the opening day roster.
No, yeah, and just to add on to that point, like obviously Bueller's a starting pitcher, so like the building up process like has to start at the beginning of spring training. So like it's not like if he's not built up at the end of the spring, he can't just say, well, I'm ready to pitch, like, throw me on the opening day roster. Like, it's a long process of building him up, and if they delay that process, then his hands will be tied when opening day rolls around. So I think we'll kind of see at the beginning of spring, like I was saying, like where he's at, and that'll kind of determine, how soon we'll see him on a big league mound.
Yeah. All right. So we have a super chat from Hawaiian Kira. Again, thank you for that. Are you going to the Seoul series? Would you know if the Korean pitcher the Dodgers signed will be playing on the national team? We are working on a trip to South Korea to cover the Seoul series. It hasn't been finalized yet. And in terms of, we get asked about the Korean pitcher multiple times, and I apologize, I forget his name. I don't know what his
Jang.
Yes, there you go. I don't know what the plans are for him and who, the Dodgers, I think he's signed with the Dodgers at this point, so they would have to allow him to pitch for the Korean national team, which I don't think they're under any sort of obligation to. So maybe that doesn't happen, but maybe they take him with them and he's able to, maybe get in a game on behalf of the Dodgers, because they are playing, I think, 2 or 3 exhibition games before the Seoul series. Let's see. Sorry, give me a second here, guys. So here we go. Jerry Wyatt question: any feeling on Kershaw signing? Daniel, you can go first.
I know you guys talked about this after the Paxton signing. I was kind of in agreement with you guys. I don't think the two are necessarily related at all. We all know, Kershaw would be out, through the All-Star break, so it's not like he was a guy that you would be counting on to be ready to go from day one. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, like I think it, like for me, it's still up to him deciding what he wants to do. And there's been, obviously we know we're getting very close to spring training right now, and he would go straight to the IL in theory. So there's people have speculated if that's kind of what the holdup is, but honestly, like no one really knows what's kind of going on with his rehab, and I think that's going to play a big role in this as well. So I still think the ball is in his court. I would love to have him back. I know that's for sure. Like looking at this roster, like having the possibility of him coming back in July, and being fresh for kind of the home stretch, that would be really cool. But they have kind of built a team that if he decides not to come back, or if he decides to go elsewhere or whatever, they're still in a really good position regardless. So I'm kind of hoping he's just kind of the cherry on top of the offseason at this point. But as far like I don't have any idea of whether it's going to happen or not at this point. There hasn't really been too much out there.
And related to Kershaw, Ellie Sheva Jones says, if the Dodgers do sign Kershaw, do you expect this to happen before spring training? I think at this point it would be after, and like Daniel just said, if you wait until spring training starts. Then the 60-day injured list comes into play, which Kershaw obviously needs to go on to because he's not going to be back until, maybe right after the All-Star break type thing. And in the Dodgers case specifically, they have a 40-man roster crunch as it is. So there's no real need to sign Kershaw now. He's not healthy yet. He's not ready to pitch. And so I think they are certainly playing the long game there. Let's see. Here's a question from BMR209. How does the Hall of Fame decide what team the player is inducted with? So this is decided by the player. When you're inducted into the Hall of Fame, you get to pick, if you've played for multiple teams, you get to pick which team's logo will be on your cap on the plaque in the Hall of Fame. And so that's how that answers that. Daniel, a quick question for you, because I sort of have early started to think about this just because Ohtani's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He spent 6 seasons with the Angels. He's going to spend X amount, 10 more with the Dodgers, presumably. He gets into the Hall of Fame. Part of me feels that Ohtani has enough respect for the Angels organization and him starting his career there, even though there wasn't team success, that he might not go with a logo so that he can sort of express his appreciation for both franchises. Is that a hot take?
I think that is a bit of a hot take, just because we're going to be coming off at least 10 years of Ohtani, and in theory, there should be at least a decent amount of success in those 10 years. Hopefully multiple World Series championships, hopefully multiple MVPs and so on and so forth. So if that's the case, then it's hard to see it's hard to see him going all the way back to the beginning of his career, like kind of going back to Adrian Beltre. Like he started with the Dodgers and then kind of bounced around and then finished with a large portion in Texas. And I think everyone's kind of expecting him to go in wearing a Texas Rangers hat. So I would expect, obviously we'll see how the next decade goes. Obviously relationships could sour if things go south and whatnot. We're not expecting that to happen, but it is a possibility. But barring anything short of that, I would imagine him and Mookie Betts both going in wearing a Dodgers hat. I think the bigger question would be Freddie Freeman, just because he spent such a significant portion of his career with the Braves, won the World Series with the Braves, and now he's spending the latter portion of his career with the Dodgers. So that's the one that could get kind of tricky.
Yeah, that is a good one. I hadn't thought about that. But fortunately, there's several years until we reach that point. And hopefully, like you said, the players we named have won, multiple World Series with the Dodgers. Daniel, bear with. This one's directed to me from Noah. He wants to know why I don't ever wear a hat. This is so I own hats. I feel like I'm in between sizes for the fitted ones. Like my size sometimes feels like it's too tight on my head, but then I've tried the next size up and it's like too loose on the sides, and I think it looks funny, and so that ends up deterring me from wearing them. I do have, which I haven't. Well, Blake I think knows about one. I do have multiple bucket hats that I've kind of thought of maybe putting one on for one of these, like not saying anything to Blake or Jeff and just coming with it on. So maybe I'll have to do that at some point.
I'm gonna need, let me know whenever that show is happening, because I'm gonna have to tune in or be on that one, because that would be awesome.
All right, I'll let sources will inform Daniel and Daniel only, as long as he doesn't tweet about it.
No promises there.
Let's see. Again, if you guys can just put question in all caps with your question, that definitely helps us out as we're scrolling through here. I did see, I could probably pair. Well, here's Ederico. 1, are you surprised Cody Bellinger is still unsigned? 2, what are the Dodgers' plans for third base besides Max Muncy? Kiké could fit third base or infield platoon. Which one of if you want to take 1 or 2, then I'll take whichever one you don't.
I guess I'll talk plans for third base. Chris Taylor, I would imagine, is kind of the primary backup there, and then you kind of have Miguel Rojas as another just all-around utility guy with Gavin Lux expected to be kind of the everyday shortstop. Miggy Rowe, we all know he's a great defender. He could play all over the diamond, so he could play third if you need to give Max Muncy a day off. And then I guess the big question mark is also, like, what is Miguel Vargas's role going to be on this team, like, if any? With the signing of Teoscar, there's not many of that at-bats available and left. Mookie at second, that was kind of Vargas's position last year, but You know, that if Mookie stays healthy, he's going to be at second base every day this year. So that just kind of leaves open third base if he is on the big league roster. We'll see. I would imagine if everyone's healthy, he kind of starts at AAA, and then if he hits the cover off the ball and a guy gets hurt or whatever, he'll be called up. But I definitely think between Muncy and Chris Taylor and Miguel Rojas, you got plenty of options at third base.
Yeah, definitely. And for Cody Bellinger, are you still surprised that he's unsigned? I'm not, from the standpoint of, like I've kind of mentioned at different points throughout our show, just the way free agency has sort of gone this offseason. There are several players who are still unsigned. And I think Bellinger specifically, as much as he had a bounce back season with the Cubs last year, there were still some concerns if you look into some of his advanced metrics and his production in that aspect. And so that, coupled with his struggles with the Dodgers, I think teams maybe are wondering, like, was it just sort of a 1 year kind of flash in the pan type thing? That's why I think so you kind of mix all that together, and I think that's why he's still a free agent. Let's see what other questions we have here. Eddie wants to know who's in the starting rotation to begin the season.
So if we, going back to Walker Buehler, if we're expecting him to kind of be slow played and maybe start the year on the IL to get built up or whatever, then that would leave Yamamoto, Glasnow, Bobby Miller, James Paxton, and Emmett Sheehan. Those would be the top five. I don't think I'm forgetting anyone from that five. And then kind of next, you move on to the young guys, whether that be Michael Grove, Gavin Stone, Kyle Hurt. They called him up at the end of last year. Like there's plenty of depth options there, but I think the first five I mentioned will be the five if everyone's healthy.
And there's still, I don't know, did you mention Ryan Yarbrough?
Oh yeah, I forgot about him.
He's another.
Well,
yeah, he's another. I know the Dodgers primarily. I think he might have made one start for them after the trade, so they primarily used him out of the bullpen. But he is, starter, capable of starting, and so maybe he's starting early on, and then he's kind of a swingman if they want to mix him in, depending on off days and things like that. It's going to be kind of tricky too because they're going to be coming back from South Korea, so they would have needed a couple starters for that series. Then they play the exhibition freeway series before the stateside opening day. And so things could look a little wonky to begin this season. Michael Creel wants to know, when will Matt actually get good food takes? Honestly, I think this is more perception than reality because the majority of people are with me more times than not. That's what I try telling everybody. Like, my opinions maybe it's different than what you might get from Daniel or Jeff, but people still tend to agree with me. And I think that's lost in all of this.
So you do have bad food takes, and that's probably never going to change. But in your defense, there are some people on the staff that have even worse food takes than you. So I think you took the cake for a while, but I think some other people, Blake, have kind of overtaken your throne there. So you're safe as far as the food take jokes are heading a different direction now.
All right. I'll take that. Dave Luna wants to know, is DodgerFest doing the yard sale this year? Yes, I'm pretty sure the Dodgers Foundation is going to have their basically mystery bag ball sale set up. And I don't know if I read somewhere that maybe they were expanding it to jerseys as well. I could be wrong, but at the very least, they should be doing some sales. Let's see. So, I mean, if we want to get into some food stuff, City Boy Chad says his hot food take is In-N-Out is okay. Let's see. Lieutenant Beaches commented Red Robin is better. I mean, I think the problem is that's a restaurant compared to fast food, which I like Red Robin. And even if you're considering taking into account that it's a restaurant, I'm not sure that it's better than In-N-Out anyway.
I agree with you there.
EB says In-N-Out double is great. Going to have to agree there. Ellie Sheva wants to know, is Matt a vegetarian or gluten-free or other? I am none of those. I try to eat healthier when I can, but I definitely enjoy my fair share of fast food. Here, AC8, do you guys know the health status of Trinan and Fireisen currently? I know, Daniel, we discussed this earlier, but can you summarize it?
Yeah, I think the expectation is that both of these guys are going to be reporting to camp healthy, but these are the kind of things that you find out like as guys do report to camp and start talking to the media and start throwing bullpens and such. So we'll have a better idea of that once, you know, pitchers and catchers report. But given how much time they've had off, they've now basically, like, when you're having surgery at the end of one season and you miss the whole next season, then you have, in theory, a full off season of being healthy, being a full year removed from the surgery. So they should be healthy, but you never know what setbacks might have taken place. Obviously, these guys aren't speaking to the media throughout the course of the offseason, so a lot of that kind of gets sorted out when they report to Camelback Ranch.
Yeah. Real quick, Laura, I do see your super chat, but just to EB says Matt isn't a broccoli head. I will have you know, EB, I had broccoli today, actually. It was from Panda Express with my favorite orange chicken, but I did have broccoli.
There you go. Get your greens in.
There we go. A super chat from Laura. Thank you for this, Laura. She wants to know who will be the biggest threat to the Dodgers in 2024.
I think it's still the Braves. They've kind of had a similar, similar struggles in the postseason as the Dodgers the last couple years, but I think they've also had been equally as dominant in the regular season, and that lineup is still really talented. They've made some solid additions. We'll see how Chris Sale works out, but in theory, if he figures it out, that's a scary addition. So I still think they're the biggest threats. And then, as much as I hate to say it, like when you look at the Astros and the bullpen, and with the addition of Josh Hader there, they're always going to be a threat as well.
Yeah, Scotty's Astros. I know if when he watches his back, he's going to appreciate you.
That's for you, Scott. I gave your boys a shout out.
All right, let's see. I'll try to. I feel like the chat has now gone into full blown food talk at this point.
And in and out is a touchy subject, I guess.
It is for some reason. Not sure. Here's a good one. Nomo Fomo, thank you for this. Will D-backs be good again this year? I think this is going to be interesting to see. I don't think it's like crazy to think that they're going to be at least the second. Well, not at least. They're going to be the second best team in the NL West, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty safe. So where do you see them? I mean, they made it to the World Series last year, so I imagine you don't see them doing that again. Yeah. How do you see their year playing out?
I mean, yeah, because they were a team who was kind of, average in the regular season and barely snuck into the playoffs and then got hot at the right time. So I think the actual team is somewhere in the middle of those two teams. Like you said, I'm not expecting them to win the World Series this year, but I am expecting them to be a little better than they were in the regular season last year. They've made some pretty solid additions, the most recent one being our old friend Jock Peterson. He's making his way around the NL West. He wants to torment the Dodgers from all the different teams in the NL West. So, yeah, your dog agrees that we don't like facing Jock. We'd rather have him on our side, but it is what it is. I think they're going to be better. I still think the Dodgers are head and shoulders above them, though.
Yeah, I apologize for that. But my dog is a Jocktober fan. Real quick, I don't know if you guys, this is happening now, or actually about an hour ago, but I just saw it pop up now. I guess Logan Webb tweeted the most disappointing Super Bowl of all time. And then I think he probably got some flack being that the 49ers made it. So he said, wait, not the 49ers. Ha ha ha, just in general. So yeah, Logan Webb wants out of San Francisco, I think will be the headlines we wake up to on Monday morning. Let's see. I saw a few more. I guess let's go to another food one. And if you guys have any final baseball questions, throw those in and we'll try to get to those as we wind this down. Noah Ortega wants to know, what is your go-to breakfast item from McDonald's?
Mine is the bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. I think as far as the bread goes, like they're all kind of the same. It's just what bread you prefer. And I like the biscuit is my preference. Obviously, you got to get a hash brown on the side with that as well.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I'm going the classic egg McMuffin, not the sausage one, though. It needs to be the ham, which I'm not a fan of ham really at all, but I eat it there. And EB is countering me. He says the sausage egg McMuffin. Yeah, not for me. Let's see. So this question's from Big. Over under Dodgers winning 106 games this season.
That's a pretty good number to put the over under at, just because the Dodgers are pretty much guaranteed. Like the baseline is 100 wins, and then it's just a matter of how healthy they could stay and such. I'll take slightly under just because 106 is a lot of wins, and if they win 103 or 104, that's still a really good season, and they'll probably still cruise to a division championship with 103 wins. So that's kind of where I have them. 106 is a high number to kind of go over.
I'm going to go over. I think they might get close to like 110. And again, like the big caveat to this is everybody's staying healthy, and that's a huge if, just because we see it every year. Players unfortunately get hurt, miss some time. But I think, I think we were looking at maybe close to 110 win team this season.
They definitely have the talent to go over. I mean, we've seen less talented teams go over that. The 2021 Giants, I believe, won 107 games. So it's really not that hard to do, I guess. But if anyone could do it, it is this Dodger team, just with all the talent they have.
I think Anthony Rendon would disagree with you on how hard it is to win 106 games, because it seems like he doesn't even want to play like 80 games in a season.
Yeah,
so how are you?
He has zero interest in playing any games, to be honest.
Let's see. So Ederico, he thinks 103 wins for the Dodgers. Adam 818 is funny. He says 120 wins and lose in the first round. Let's see. Not really seeing too many more questions, so I think maybe we'll just close the show down. Again, if you guys have any last-minute ones, just throw them in now, and we'll try to get to them. But if not, we'll probably sign off for the night. BC says 130 and 42.
The math isn't math on that one.
Noah Ortega says 116, I think, wins, not wins, maybe.
D for Dodgers, I guess.
Yeah, Michael Carrillo says we should win less games, regular season, save those wins for the playoffs. Fair point, but unfortunately, it doesn't correlate that way.
I say, why not both, right? Like that, like the main.
There you go. I think here's Pizza in the Box says McDonald's in Japan is 100 times better than here.
I believe it.
GI says any Dodger starter throwing over 150 innings.
I would say Yamamoto if he stays healthy. Just because they might limit his starts and pitch him like once a week or once every 6 days instead of 5. But he typically has pitched deep into games in his career. So if he's going 7 innings, 1 start, 8 another, I definitely think he'll clear 150 innings. He's been known as kind of a workhorse.
Yeah, I kind of laughed when the Dodgers had Yamamoto's press conference. Stan Kasten was on Sportsnet LA after kind of the main onstage stuff, and he was talking to Kirsten Watson. I forgot his exact quote, but he basically, I think he said something to the effect of Yamamoto is somebody who could throw like 120 pitches in a starter. So like he's used to doing that. And Kasten said the Dodgers needed a pitcher like that. And I just couldn't help but laugh. I was thinking, man, like you guys know, there is no way Dave Roberts and the front office is going to get Yamamoto. Maybe he'll do it every now and then, but regularly touch, 120 or 130 pitch, whatever number it was. It was like completely outlandish for how the Dodgers have operated. But yeah, I think, he has proven to be durable in Japan. He has a very unique training regimen that he's bringing over. So yeah, I think he's probably the safe bet for 150 innings. I did see a couple more questions here. Elisheba Jones wants to know, will Mookie ever play right field in 2024? I think he will, but the innings and the games will be few and far between. In terms of starts, like honestly, if everything goes sort of according to plan for the Dodgers, I think he makes less than like 10 starts in right field. I think the time you will see him in right field is going to be late in the game when maybe they've gone to kind of some defensive substitutions and things like that, and they've needed to kick him out into right field. All right, so I see 2 more here that I think are going to be good to end on. BMR 209 says, when does a 60-day IL open? That's with the start of spring training. And I think the last question is probably a good one to close on. Lieutenant Beecher says, who wins the Super Bowl? So Daniel, what's your pick?
So I do think the 49ers have the best team, as much as it pains me to say that. Obviously, you can see right here, I'm a LA Rams guy, so definitely not going to be rooting for the 49ers. So I think they have the better team, but I also think Patrick Mahomes is a guy you can never bet against, and he's proven it time and time again at this point. So I am going to go with the Chiefs just because I'm going to put all my put it all behind Patrick Mahomes. Hope they could take down the Niners and the Bay Area. I think this is a rematch of like 4 years ago, I want to say. I do think it's more evenly matched than that one was, but I still am taking Mahomes.
Yeah, so I think the 49ers are a good team. But the last 2 weeks, how they play, I mean, you could argue that they really had no business. I don't think they had any business beating the Packers I think the Packers, more so than the Lions, put themselves in position to still win that game late. The Lions today kind of basically collapsed after the first half of some pretty impressive football. So I agree with you. No truth to the rumors that Daniel and I are Swifties. I think this is our choices were made strictly on football merit. But yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes will basically sort of be the difference maker there.
They might have to give Taylor Swift Rookie of the Year. She's in her first season of the NFL. She made it to the Super Bowl, so good for her.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. All right, so I think that's going to do it for us. Again, thank you guys for joining us for this live show, and big thank you to Daniel for hopping over, taking some time out of running Lakers Nation for us. And if you are if you're listening to this in podcast after the fact, we appreciate you. You can find us here every Sunday night doing live shows, and we also are putting up videos throughout the week as well. And like I mentioned, the Dodgers are doing their community tour this week, and so Blake and I are going to be sort of splitting up the events so that we can kind of be everywhere at once, and we'll definitely have articles for you up on DodgerBlue.com, and we're also going to have videos and interviews uploaded to our YouTube channel. So again, just please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so that you can interact with us and definitely not miss anything. So that's going to do it. Again, that's Daniel. I'm Matthew. Thanks for joining us.